Let me ask you a question. Have you ever found yourself awake at 3:17 a.m.? No alarm clock, no noise, just awake. When you wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., something powerful is happening. Not just physically, but spiritually and mentally. The world around you is still. The chaos hasn't begun. Traffic isn't honking, phones aren't buzzing, emails aren't pinging. That early hour is not just quiet. It's sacred. It's not just a time on the clock. It's a space in your soul. And in that space, something is trying to reach you. It's not insomnia. It's not random. It's not your bladder. It's the universe, God, divine intelligence, whatever you want to call it, trying to initiate a private meeting. The only question is, will you attend? Most people miss this because they think sleep is the only form of rest. But what they don't realize is that spiritual alignment brings a deeper rest than 8 hours ever could. You see, when you get quiet in those early hours, you're not just sitting in silence. You're positioning yourself for instruction. You're creating a channel for downloads that can't come through at 3 p.m. because at 3 p.m., your mind is flooded with distractions. But at 3 a.m., you're open, receptive, available. That's when the ideas flow. That's when the "I should call that person" thought hits you. That's when you remember the product idea you had 3 years ago but didn't act on. That's when clarity shows up, not in a rush, but like a gentle friend who says, "I've been waiting for you." In that silence, you begin to hear what's really going on inside of you. You hear the truth about the business you've been tolerating but not building. You hear the whispers of the dreams you've been suppressing to stay comfortable. You hear solutions to problems that seemed unsolvable just yesterday. That's not your mind racing. That's your spirit awakening. You're not crazy. You're called. But here's the part most people miss. Silence is not just the absence of noise. Silence is the presence of awareness. When you allow yourself to sit in that stillness without reaching for your phone, without scrolling, without numbing, you begin to hear what God's been trying to say all day. You hear direction. You hear wisdom. You hear instruction. And those are the very things you've been begging for during the day. The clarity you prayed for at lunch might be waiting for you at 4 to 11 a.m., but you've got to be there to receive it. You've got to get still enough to hear the blueprint. Because the reason your next level hasn't shown up yet isn't because it isn't ready. It's because you're not listening. You're moving too fast. You're talking too much. You're worrying too loud. But in that early morning silence, that's when you can finally hear the whisper that says, "Here's the idea. Here's the strategy. Here's the step. Here's the healing." And the beautiful thing is, it doesn't come as a shout. It comes as a whisper, because God doesn't compete with chaos. He speaks in clarity. And clarity needs space. You create that space when you honor the wake up call at 3:27 a.m. instead of brushing it off and rolling over. You create that space when you light a candle, grab a notebook, and just sit. You don't have to perform. You don't have to impress. You just have to listen. You've been asking for direction. You've been asking for a way to stand out. You've been asking for a shift. And that shift may begin in the silence. Not the silence of defeat, but the silence of intention. The silence of saying, "I'm here. I'm listening. Speak." It's in that space where creative downloads come, not ideas that make sense to everybody, not safe plans. I'm talking about those disruptive, destiny-altering strategies that could change your business, your bank account, and your bloodline, but you've got to be tuned in to hear them. You've got to be willing to be uncomfortable for 5 minutes to receive insight that could bless you for 5 decades. So instead of seeing those early wake-ups as an inconvenience, what if you saw them as an invitation? An invitation to build without distraction, to reflect without judgment, to listen without agenda. That's the kind of silence that doesn't just calm your mind. It awakens your mission. And you can't put a price tag on that kind of clarity. It's worth more than sleep. It's worth more than scrolling. It's the place where destiny begins to speak in a voice only you can hear. When you find yourself awake between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., you're not just being pulled out of sleep. You're being summoned into power. And in that power, the most vital thing you can do is pray. Not casually, not half asleep, not with routine words you memorized years ago, but with precision and authority. You are not just whispering hopes into the air, you are speaking life into the atmosphere. At that hour, you are stepping into the command center of your soul, where real shifts happen, where mountains move, where decisions are made in the spirit that will soon manifest in the natural. This is not the time for soft prayers. This is not the time to simply say, thank you, and go back to bed. This is war room time. This is declaration time. This is the time where kings speak. And when they speak, things move. You're not begging. You're not bargaining. You're declaring. You're aligning your words with the promises you believe, and you're calling things that are not as though they were. You're not speaking from your feelings. You're speaking from your faith. This is where you speak to your future as it helps us. You don't wait for the world to give you permission. You create the conditions you want by speaking them with authority. My business is multiplying. Clients are being drawn to me. I am walking in divine health. My family is protected. You speak these words not because everything looks perfect, but because you understand that your words shape your world. At 3 a.m., your words carry weight. They are not being drowned out by distractions. They are heard clearly, with intention, with energy. What you say in those quiet hours sets the tone for what unfolds in your life. You don't just pray randomly. You pray strategically. You know where the battle is, and you target it. You know where the breakthrough is, and you speak to it. Your prayer becomes like a sniper rifle, not a scattered shotgun blast. You don't just say, help me. You say, open the door I've been assigned to walk through today. You say, give me clarity on the offer I'm supposed to make. You say, show me where the money is hiding. You don't hesitate. You command your morning. You walk into prayer not as a beggar, but as an hear. And when hires speak, they don't hope, they expect. You know who you are, and more importantly, you know whose you are. You've been given dominion, you've given keys. So you unlock, you decree, you declare. You build with words before you build with work. Because everything that manifests in the physical first existed in the spiritual. And your prayer is how you release what's already yours. That's why your tone matters. That's why your posture matters. When you get up at that hour, you're not stumbling around hoping something magical happens. You're walking into the divine boardroom and making executive decisions. You're accessing information. You're giving instructions, as helps us. You're setting the climate. Your voice becomes a thermostat, not a thermometer. You're not reporting on what's wrong. You're setting the temperature for what's coming next. It's not about length. It's about intensity. You could speak for 3 minutes and shift something that's been stuck for 3 years, because at that hour, your prayers don't bounce. They land. They don't float. They cut. There's something powerful about speaking with precision, especially when the world is silent and heaven is listening. That's when the authority inside you gets activated. The second you start praying with purpose, you begin disrupting patterns. You shake loose what's been stagnant. You cancel what's been trying to cling to you. You open what's been sealed. You make room for divine appointments, divine contracts, divine connections. It's not that you're manipulating outcomes. It's that you're partnering with the source of all outcomes. You're not trying to force it, you're flowing with it. That's the power of precise prayer and the authority you speak with. It doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being aligned. It comes from knowing who sent you. When you wake up and declare with your chest, today bends to purpose, you're not just making noise. You're establishing law. You are setting spiritual legislation in place that circumstances have no choice but to obey. That level of confidence doesn't come from what you've achieved. It comes from what you believe. So when your eyes pop open before sunrise, understand that this isn't just about starting early. It's about starting right. The way you speak into the darkness determines what kind of light meets you on the other side. You don't just pray to survive the day. You pray to take ownership of it. You release gratitude for what's already coming. You speak over your money, your marketing, your mind, your marriage, your movement. Because when you pray with that kind of clarity, the world doesn't just react, it responds to your voice. When you wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., you've entered a space where the natural world is quiet, but the spiritual world is vibrating with possibility. This is not the hour for worry. This is not the hour for doubt. This is the hour to activate your wealth mindset. Because before wealth ever shows up in your wallet, it must first show up in your thinking. Most people are poor not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack the framework to receive abundance. And that framework is built in moments just like this one. Early, silent, undisturbed. This is where you confront every internal ceiling you've been living under. This is where you look poverty in the face, not just the poverty of money, but the poverty of vision, the poverty of belief, the poverty of self-worth. And you reject it. You say, I was not created to just survive. I was designed to thrive. You stop seeing money as something you chase and start seeing it as something that responds to value. You shift from desperation to intention, from fear to clarity, from hustle to harmony. Your wealth mindset isn't something that turns on at your desk. It begins before the sun comes up. It begins when you look around and there's no applause, no audience, no affirmations, just you and the quiet reminder that you are the solution to a specific problem in the marketplace. And if you're willing to package that solution, if you're willing to position it, price it, and present it, then the income is already lined up. It's just waiting for you to act like you believe it. You don't wake up early just to reflect. You wake up to create. You look at your life and ask, what am I sitting on that someone else is desperate for? You've got skills, you've got experiences, you've got insights, but they won't serve you or others until you shift from consumer to creator. This hour is about turning your thoughts into strategy, turning your experience into offers, turning your pain into packages, not because you're chasing money, but because you understand that wealth is a tool, and tools in the hands of the right build empires that bless generations. You start asking different questions. Instead of, how can I make more money? You ask, how can I solve bigger problems? Instead of, what should I sell? You ask, what transformation can I offer? You realize that money is a reflection of movement. When you move people with your message, your method, your model, money moves to meet you. You start thinking like a producer, not a passenger. You don't wait for the economy, you become the economy. This mindset sees time differently. At 3:45 a.m., most people think it's too early to do anything that matters. But when you've got a wealth mindset, you realize this is prime time. This is when billion-dollar downloads drop. This is when unshakable confidence is built. This is when you make the decision that you will never again shrink to fit someone else's version of success. You begin seeing your mornings as the birthing ground for multidimensional success. Spiritual, financial, emotional. You build wealth on paper, in your heart, and in your legacy. It's not about being greedy. It's about being responsible. When you've been gifted with a vision, it's your duty to multiply it. A wealth mindset says, if I don't build this, someone stays stuck. If I don't share what I know, someone remains broke. You realize that the offer in your head isn't just a product. It's an answer. And answers deserve compensation. Wealth is not a reward for hard work. It's a reward for value creation. And value comes from clarity. Clarity comes from silence. Silence comes when you honor these early hours. This is also the time to challenge every belief you inherited that keeps you broke. Every voice that told you rich people are evil, that money is dangerous, that success requires sacrifice without reward. You dismantle those lies piece by piece. You replace them with truth-on money in the hands of a good person changes everything. Money amplifies who you are. It doesn't corrupt, it reveals. And if your heart is right, your hands should be full. Full hands build schools. Full hands feed families. Full hands fund dreams. You weren't meant to live at the mercy of lack. You were meant to master overflow. You activate a wealth mindset when you take ownership of your time, your thoughts, and your talents. You no longer ask for permission to prosper. You recognize that wealth is not a privilege. It's a responsibility, as it helps us. You've been given ideas that others don't have. You've been shown gaps that others overlook. That's not random. That's a clue. And this early hour is your invitation to lean into it. You wake up and you don't just pray, you strategize. You don't just dream, you design. You don't just survive, you build systems that print freedom, impact, and multiplication. When you wake up between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m., your mind is in its most unfiltered state. The distractions are gone. The noise of the world is still asleep. You're in a rare space where the ideas that usually get drowned out by emails, phone calls, and endless to-do lists finally have room to breathe. This is the moment where inspiration flows with clarity and depth. Not because you're forcing it, but because you're finally still enough to receive it. And in that sacred stillness, what you must do is write the vision. Not think about it, not imagine it vaguely, not hope it returns later. You write it down in detail with boldness, with precision, as if it's already real. Your vision is not just a dream. It's an assignment. It's a divine download waiting to be captured before it evaporates in the morning rush. At 3:22 a.m., that business idea that flashes across your mind is not a coincidence. It's an instruction. That course title, that book concept, that framework, that name for your new offer, that system you've been trying to figure out. It all shows up when your defenses are down and your intuition is up. But it won't matter unless you document it. You have to treat your early morning thoughts like gold because that's exactly what they are. They're raw, unedited access to your purpose. They're seeds of impact and income wrapped in simplicity. You may think, I'll remember this later, but you won't. Life will come rushing in. The day will bring demands. And what felt like fire in your spirit at 4:05 a.m. will fade into the fog of distraction by 9:30 a.m. as it helps us. That's why you keep a journal next to your bed. That's why you open your notes app before you open social media. That's why you write the vision before you check the weather, because your internal forecast is more powerful than anything the news will tell you. The act of writing is not about recording. It's about building. When you write, you clarify, you solidify, you activate. You're not just putting words on a page. You're constructing blueprints. You are literally creating the foundation of your future with a pen. That's how businesses are born. That's how books get written. That's how speeches get crafted. That's how courses get built. The people you admire didn't wait till everything was perfect. They wrote when the idea was messy, fresh, and incomplete. And they trusted that as they wrote, the clarity would follow. Writing the vision is not a luxury, it's a necessity. Because your mind is not a storage unit, it's a processing center. When you overload it by trying to keep everything in your head, you dilute your power. But when you write, you transfer your thoughts into something tangible. You free up space to think deeper, dream bigger, and move faster. You give structure to what once was abstract. You turn energy into strategy. And it's not just about business or money. It's about becoming who you were born to be. That morning hour reveals parts of you that your busy schedule tries to bury. It reminds you of your higher calling. It stirs up your creativity. It whispers, you were made for more. But if you don't capture those whispers, they disappear. You have to honor them. You have to take them seriously. You have to believe that they showed up for a reason, and that reason is connected to your destiny. Sometimes you'll write something and not even know what it means yet. That's fine. Write it anyway. Maybe it's a sentence. Maybe it's a phrase. Maybe it's a diagram. Maybe it's a business model. Just get it out. Don't judge it. Don't edit it. Just release it. Some of the most powerful things you'll ever create will begin as scribbles in a notebook at 3:58 a.m. as it helps us. That's where movements start. That's where messages are born. That's where revenue models are sketched that later turn into millions. But it doesn't happen in your head. It happens on paper. Writing the vision is about discipline. It's about saying, I don't care how tired I am, I'm going to capture this. It's about trusting that what's waking you up is not random. It's sacred. It's strategy. It's supply in seed form. And the harvest only comes to those who recognize the value of the seed. You're not waiting for clarity. You're creating clarity by showing up with a pen when everyone else is still asleep. You're drawing maps for a territory you haven't even walked through yet because you believe in what's coming before it arrives. You're not journaling to feel better. You're documenting to build legacy.